Hello, I'm Emily Beestrom.
Hi, and I'm Chloe Neds, and today we're going to be discussing the book Are We Born Racist by Jason Marsh.
So, this book talks about human prejudices and the research that has delved into why some people are more biased than others, where our prejudices can come from, and most importantly, how we can lower our prejudices and racist attitudes.
In the book Are We Born Racist, it did an amazing job of covering a vast amount of topics surrounding racism and used a variety of perspectives and stories in order to help the reader learn more and deepen their understanding.
Yes, it was extremely interesting to read. One of the things that interests me was just how much research has been done on this topic of prejudice. In our society today, I think that we are very much focusing on getting rid of prejudices more than we ever have in the last 5 years. In fact, we can see this through the BML movement, the media getting more involved, and many more things.
So I actually know that Emily and I have both taken a social psychology course here at Hope, and in that class we talked a lot about prejudices. Something that the book talks about is a prejudice test where you're given an African American face and then a Caucasian person's face, and then it tests for these implicit prejudices.
Yes, and it was very interesting to see our own results and realizing our own implicit prejudices. I was surprised, in fact, on what they were.
I was shocked. Okay, so Emily, I'm going to start by asking you some questions about the book, and then we can go from there. So my first question is, how might we grow to accept the diversity we see around us and also inside of us?
I think one of the best ways to grow is by immersing yourself in other cultures. Being able to understand other people and more about them, I think, allows us to be more accepting and understanding.
Yeah.
For example, I think that everyone should take a step back and think about what they say and their actions towards others. By taking the implicit association test, it allowed me and I think others to become more aware of our own selves and themselves.
I totally agree. Like, becoming aware of your own self will help you learn and grow as a person.
Yeah.
Okay, so another question that I have is, what was the most interesting research that you read about? Like, this book had so many good studies shown, and I just want to know what your favorite one was, maybe.
Oh, geez, I have to think. I think that the most interesting research that I read about was when the researchers had the participants hold a pencil between their teeth to make them feel like they were smiling.
Mm-hmm.
The research found that facial feedback can be enough to produce mild positive emotions and can lead to more favorable evaluations of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was super interesting to me because just this simple facial expression can change someone's outlook and their prejudices.
That is actually so crazy when you think about it. I really enjoyed that one too. Okay, so I have another question. What are your thoughts on, the book covered this idea of being colorblind, and so I just want to know, like, if your thoughts correlate to what the book stated.
Yeah, so this book brought up the idea of colorblindness a few times, and I think I fully agree with what was stated. I feel like the idea of being colorblind seems like it could be a good thing at first glance. However, after taking like a harder look, it is very degrading to the variety of beautiful and vastly different cultures that surround us. Taking the colorblind approach is an easy way out in order to supposedly avoid being racist, when in reality, this entire approach actually is promoting racism.
Yeah. It's so crazy because it's something that it seems like it's a good thing, and it is actually just so bad.
Yeah.
Okay, so one last question I have for you is, since you stated that you do agree with what the book said about being colorblind, what do you think are some good ways to help move away from this whole concept?
Well, I definitely think that for starters, this topic needs to be addressed and talked about more. I feel it's really important to celebrate the amazing differences between cultures instead of trying to act like we are completely blind to them. I also think that it's really extremely important to ask questions respectfully when you are in doubt. It's so necessary that we learn and grow together, and the only way that can be done is by opening up and actually being willing to learn about other cultures.
Yeah, and asking questions is such a good way to do that because everybody just needs to learn more and grow.
All right, so Chloe, I have a couple of questions for you now about the book.
Okay.
So we've all heard in the reading, it said reading, writing, and arithmetic, the 3 R's. Do you agree with what the author said that we need to add the 4th R, which would be relationship?
Yeah, so I found this super interesting, and I definitely 100% agree that adding that 4th R of relationship is so vital. We know that through research and social relationships with people from many types of groups, it does reduce not only prejudice, but like decreases social anxiety, and it just talked about like a general positive experience that leads to between different groups.
Yeah, I actually also know that you've traveled to Haiti a couple times. do you think that has anything to do with
Yeah,
relationships?
so when I've gone to Haiti like 9 or 10 times now, and it's so crazy for me to look back on my previous trips and like my earlier trips, like my first and second and third, and I have like looked back and seen how much I've grown through it.
Yeah.
And I love that now I feel so much more comfortable, and I still have so much room to grow, which I know, but I'm just really comfortable delving into that culture and asking questions when I'm not sure.
Yeah, okay. I think that that's super cool that you've had those experiences. So my second question for you is, what was the most eye-opening thing you read about?
Oh my gosh, that's so hard. There were so many things. I think, there was that one story about the girl, and I believe it was during her swim lessons, and he talked about the girl rubbing her arm and saying, and saying that she was trying to like rub the black off of her arm. And when I read that sentence, my heart sank. The fact that this little girl is thinking of herself in that manner was so disheartening to me. I think that people need to realize that what they say and how they're acting, what they're doing, is affecting somebody no matter what their age is. These little kids are hearing these things and taking it to heart. And so I feel like these acts of blatant racism, along with just smaller microaggressions, are just as bad and so impactful. So I just hope that as a society we can improve upon that massively.
Yeah, I remember reading that story and like my jaw dropped.
Yeah.
And I felt like tears welling up that
Crazy.
That little girl was just doing that.
Breaks my heart.
All right. So my third question for you what are some interesting points made in the book concerning interracial relationships?
Yeah, so that was a section of the book that really I had just not thought about deeply, and I loved reading about it. There were so many things discussed about interracial relationships, and the book actually mentioned like some pros and cons, and I found some of the negative aspects I had never thought about. And it's talked about things like how walking down the street can just that alone can be a challenge, and how everybody, including these strangers, seems as if they have this right to comment on their relationships and share their opinions, which I cannot imagine dealing with. Like that would
feel like we don't even have to go through that.
Like that would be so hard for me to manage. The book also discussed how being in an interracial relationship can be challenging with like certain family members and small comments that are made, which I also can't imagine dealing with. But I did really like that the book shared some of the joys of being in an interracial relationship.
Yeah.
I just that it's like so exciting and fun, and that it does allow you to experience these different cultures and grow in music tastes and learn about hairstyles and different family dynamics, which I thought was really cool that it mentioned.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was kind of like the positive outlook side of everything. And my final question for you is, what is one thing that stuck out to you and you would like to share with the podcast today?
Yes, of course. Okay, seriously, these questions are like, there's so many things I want to talk about. I think it was towards the very end of the book, and there was one particular story that it really stuck out to me. I believe the girl's name was Rebecca something.
Yeah, I know Rebecca, what you're talking about.
But she shared her story about being like biracial, and the things that kind of came along with that. It was mentioned in one study that those who are biracial experience more racism than like monoracial people, I believe is the term. Okay. And I actually recently watched a movie called The Hate U Give, and that title spells out the word thug. And so that whole movie related to the struggles that the Rebecca girl talked about.
I didn't even realize that.
And so it was just this like story of like both girls facing this challenge of trying to fit into two different worlds, whether they're putting on a different face depending on who they're talking to, and changing the slang they use and like the hairstyles they're doing and the clothes that they're wearing. It was just so eye-opening for me to kind of try and understand like how challenging that must be to feel like you need to change yourself depending on what group you're talking to.
That's really interesting that you made that connection. I didn't even realize that it spelled out thug.
Yeah.
I've seen that movie before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so they really like those two girls like just really I feel like related and drove that point home. Yeah.
Well, overall, I think that everyone should have the opportunity to read this book.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because it was very eye-opening and interesting, especially like all the research that's behind all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And just like it has been shown also through research, the more aware you are, the less prejudiced that you are.
Yeah. I think it was a great book to read.
Yeah.
Definitely recommend.
All right. Well, I'm Emily Bishop.
And I'm Chloe Nitz.
And thank you for coming to our podcast. Signing off.